Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Plant Free MD podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Anthony Chaffee, and today I have a very special guest, Anita Breeze, who is host of the KetogenicWoman YouTube channel. Anita, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
You are so welcome. It's an honor to be here. I'm very happy to be here, actually.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm glad you're here too. So for people who haven't come across you or your channel before, can you tell us a bit about yourself and what you do and what your channel is
Yeah.
about?
Yes. Okay. I will do that. So I have been, I've been, I have to say, I've been on a weight loss journey my entire life. I started, I think my first time I ever went to, tried to lose weight, I was 12 when my mom dragged me into a Weight Watchers meeting. And that started my whole dieting career. I was, born chubby. I was a chubby little toddler, chubby kid in school. When I was in high school, I was, size 18, 20. I didn't fit in, not only size wise, but I always just felt like an outsider and just didn't understand why everyone else was thin and I was overweight. It was just, just kind of set the theme for my life, I guess. And just kind of went that way through my whole life, just trying one thing after another, following along with my mom, who also was trying one thing after another. She struggled with the same up and down weight issues as I did. And never really knowing that it was about the types of foods that I was eating, that we were eating as a family. My mom, actually different from me, she grew up thin. I look at pictures of her. She was, a slender, beautiful woman. And but she was from another country. And she immigrated here in the 1950s, adopted the Western lifestyle. Her doctor, she came from a farming family. Like, they were farmers. They grew their own food. They grew vegetables, of course, as well, but they also had, livestock. Everything they ate was something that they produced or grew themselves, and they worked the land, and that was how they lived. But then they came here and adopted the Western lifestyle, and her own doctor advised her, stop eating that butter. It's full of cholesterol. It's full of bad things. You're gonna, have a heart attack. She was encouraged to eat, to switch the butter out for mazola oil, that kind of thing. I know. And, she became the crusader of the family, stop eating the saturated fats and everybody's got all these, everybody in our family has, she was starting to sort of, hone in on the fact that all of our farming relatives were eating pigs and cows and all these things that were bad for them. Like, she just was really convinced. She went on a low-fat crusade. And that didn't sit well with my physiology, and her and I both got bigger and bigger, and didn't know why, and it took a long time to figure out. Well, we were doing the exact opposite of what we should be doing, and here we are. She was always about 150 pounds overweight, and so was I. I've actually lost 150 pounds at this point. I still have about 30 more that I would like to lose, and I'm working on it. But it wasn't until I discovered low carb eating through Dr. Atkins back in the 70s that I started to put some pieces together. And I guess about 15 years ago, I decided, okay, I'm going to do this low carb thing again. That was the only thing that ever worked for me. I was about 320 pounds at that point, and I started just cutting carbs and started with that. And now I do carnivore.
Mhm.
But it was a gradual process to get here. And,
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh yeah. Well,
that's kind of the story.
well, it's a great story, and I'm really glad to hear that you've sort of come full circle on that. Um, so obviously, okay. So the impetus was Atkins, and that sort of introduced
hmm
that sort of idea to you. Um, so how long did you do Atkins or ketogenic sort of approaches, and how did that go for you? And then what made you switch to like full carnivore, and what was the difference between those two?
Okay. Yeah, so back in the 70s, I saw an article. Well, my mom actually, she bought Woman's World, saw an article, Dr. Atkins, the whole low carb thing, and we both tried it, and we both did well. And but then we didn't know why we were doing it. We didn't know, what the science was, anything like that. It was, to me, it was just another diet, but it worked. It worked well. And I left that. But then later, after a few more failures, I kept remembering, well, gee, that was the one that I feel like I did the best on. So when about 15 years ago, I decided, okay, this is it. I was 50. Yeah, I'm 67. So it's actually probably a little more than 15 years ago because I'm 67 now. But I decided that this was it. Like I was not going to, go through menopause and all those things that you go through so overweight. And so I went back to Atkins. I still have the same book on my shelf, the old Diet Revolution. I went back to that. And then I started, by then, we had the internet. And so I started looking into low carb recipes. And from there on the internet, I found keto. And that was a new term to me. And I started looking into that. I found Kelly Hogan at some point. I was doing keto. And I found her and I thought, no, that is just, how can anyone just eat meat that made, it just went against everything. I thought it was way too out there. You have to have fiber, right? Like it's an essential nutrient. I was, convinced of that. And, but the seed was planted. And so I went back to keto. And my issues on keto for me were that I was still overeating particular foods like nuts, and I was making keto treats, and there's things that are allowed on keto. You can have fruits, things like that, but those were the foods that were causing me the most problems. So I can't take an ounce of macadamia nuts. I love macadamia nuts, but an ounce is just not going to happen. I will eat the entire bag. And same with, the fruit. I can't do the quarter cup so that you get the allotted carbs. Like that just didn't work for me. I needed to do something where I could just eat until I was full and walk away. Most of those foods didn't do that for me. They triggered something in me, and I didn't know that at the time that was what it was. I just thought, I always thought it was me. There's something wrong with me. Like I can't, I can't do this. It's just too hard. I'm a fail. All those things that people like me go through. But when I tried the meat, it was like you stop. You can only eat so much steak. You can only eat so much pork, and then your body says stop. My body doesn't say stop when it comes to things like fruit and nuts and treats, and of course high carb processed foods, ultra processed foods. My body doesn't have that stop signal that it has with meat. And so the carnivore, it just kept coming back. I kept running in, at first I had found Kelly and then, didn't look at her anymore. And then slowly started finding other people who were doing it. And it just made more and more sense to me after a while. And I did a few 30-day challenges. There was people that I knew who were dabbling in carnivore, and every now and then they would say, hey, let's do a 30-day meat-only challenge. And I always enjoyed it. It was so easy, but I was still drawn back to those other foods because they were more enticing. And, eventually I got the idea, okay, this is like being addicted to something. This is, I'm getting some kind of a dopamine hit. And, eventually I figured out that, okay, I'm addicted to this stuff, and I just need to focus on the meat. And so that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, well, that's very good. And so how are you doing? Obviously, from a weight perspective, you've lost a significant amount of weight. Did that continue or improve by going full carnivore? Or
yeah, so I had actually, I did lose weight, of course, doing the low carbs, and I did lose weight on keto, but I got stuck at around, I had lost 80 to 100 pounds. And I kind of got stuck in that area. I couldn't, I was still eating the nuts. I was still eating the keto treats, still doing that. Around that time, that was in 2017, was when my dad passed away. And he, I really took that hard, and I gained back some of the weight. And I became the caregiver for my mother, who had dementia and Alzheimer's.
I'm so sorry.
And so that was a tough few years, but it really got me in tune with my why, because she herself was over 100 pounds overweight. And I took a course on Alzheimer's and dementia through my local Alzheimer's Society. And there I learned a lot I didn't know about that disease, and how actually for many of them, it's mostly preventable. I was taught that it was, she had vascular dementia. So it's like the things that are good for your heart are also really good for your brain, and vice versa. Things that are bad for your heart are bad for your brain. And her love of mazola oil, everything fried in mazola oil, and her love of sweets and all the things that made her 150 pounds overweight were the same things that made me 150 pounds overweight. And I saw my future for the first time. I clearly thought and, saw, this is where I'm going to be. This is where I'm going to be in 10, 20 years if I don't make a change. I'm following in her footsteps. And the more she struggled, the more I actually was able to get back on the right track. I had gained about 40 pounds back when my dad passed. I was very stressed out and emotional, and still addicted to those foods. But as she struggled, and she basically showed me how to get back on track. It was awful, but it was good at the same time, because I learned so much from that experience, and my why is very clear. I don't want my kids to have to go through what I went through with her. And I just feel that, that whole experience, I just really got in touch with a very strong why. And that keeps me going. It's something that I have written down. It's something that I review a lot. It's something that I think about a lot. I think for someone like me who has been addicted for so long to those things, I feel like it's not always as simple as just eating the meat. I have to do a lot of work in my head as well. And I just feel that that helped me to, like, taking care of her was difficult, but it was also very rewarding. And I I will always love her for that. She is gone now, but I will always love her for showing me the way, even though she had no idea she was showing me the way. She berated me, until her dying day about having butter. That was one of the things we used to, have our little arguments about. Like, she was convinced that because I ate butter, I was going to the grave, and she always wanted me to make her to fry her fish in mazola oil, and I would nod and say, "Yeah, Mom, I made it in mazola oil. Isn't it good?" But I had actually fried it in butter for her.
Good. Yeah, thank God.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of what really solidified my path. I did lose. I not only lost the 40 that I regained, but I continued to lose more till I'm now at that kind of 150-pound point, and working on the rest of it.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. And just sort of a brief aside on that, the the brain needs certain nutrients, and those nutrients do not come from mazola oil. They just don't. They're not present. But butter does have a lot of these things, and meat has the rest. So, B12 is required for proper myelination of the brain, or you'll get demyelination of the brain. You can get brain atrophy. And people say, well, this is normal age-related brain atrophy, as the brain shrinks over time, but it's not actually. I don't think that's normal. I don't think it's normal for the brain to rot out of your head. We don't see this in any other form of life on Earth. We just don't. And we call it normal because we see it so often. But what I think it is it's malnutrition over time. Oxford University published a paper in 2008 that showed if your B12 levels in American numbers were under sort of 650, 700, which is a large majority of that range where people think that they're normal in. But below that range, people's brains are actually shrinking by 2.5% every 5 years. And under
Wow.
450 or so, people's brains are shrinking by 5.5% over 5 years. So that's 1.1% per year. And the reference range goes down to 150, 200. So that is such a significant deficiency that you're actually getting brain damage. And you're seeing thinning of the
Wow.
spinal cord, you're seeing atrophy of the brain. And if you're estimating 1.1% volume loss per year, you go from a 40-year-old brain, 30 years later, you're losing 30% of your brain. That is what you're going to see is normal age-related atrophy. So that's not age-related, that's nutrition-related. And we see this in children. There's children of vegans and vegetarians typically will get significant B12 or can get significant B12 deficiencies because this doesn't come from plants. And so if they're not supplementing properly, even if the mother who's breastfeeding isn't supplementing properly, so her levels aren't enough, that's not going to translate into the breast milk properly. And you'll get you look it up online. People can look this up. It's one of the first images that pops up on Google. B12, scans of MRI brain of baby with B12 deficiency. It shows up a 6-month-old baby, children of vegetarian parents.
Wow.
6 months old, you're breastfeeding, right? And because formula has B12 fortified in it, right? So it's not a formula-fed baby; it's a
Oh,
breastfed baby, right? And then
wow.
even if they had been switched over to solids, they're vegetarian. They're being switched over to vegetables that
Yeah.
don't have B12. This baby's brain, a 6-month-old brain, looked like an 80-year-old Alzheimer's patient. That's what it looked like. It was
Wow.
frightening. And then after 5 months on daily B12 supplementation, it had filled out to the point of looking like an average 40-year-old. But it did not look like a 6-month-old baby's brain. It should be completely packed to capacity inside that skull. So that baby will never be the person that it was meant to be. But if you reverse that timeline looks very similar to what we call normal aging. We see a baby's brain just full to the brim of brain. Again, your 30s and 40s, it has atrophied down significantly. And then another 30, 40 years down the track, it's another 30% or so. So,
Oh my goodness.
if you're not getting proper nutrients for your brain will shrink over time, even if you started from a very strong base. And obviously, the stronger
Wow.
your base, the better you'll be long term. But no one's going to last forever if you're shrinking by 1% per year. B12 is only one small part of it. It's a major part of it, but it's only one piece because all of these nutrients are essential and they only come from meat. So it's B12, it's D3, it's DHA, it's EPA, it's choline, creatine, carnitine. And yes, saturated fat and cholesterol. These are things that your brain has to have in order to
Yeah.
properly maintain its structure and function. And so we go away from that and we exclude those fats and those nutrients. The brain will not be able to reliably function and grow and heal and repair itself, and it will atrophy over time. And that's what we'll see. I have a patient, well, not a patient of mine, but someone I've discussed for putting in our case series for reversing multiple sclerosis by going, ketogenic carnivore. And he wasn't full 100% carnivore, but very, very close, strongly ketogenic, a couple leafy greens here and there, but mostly meat. And he understood that you needed to you needed to stop the inflammatory process, but then you needed to replace these nutrients that the brain needed to regrow, specifically the myelin. And so he did all these things, renourished himself, and suppressed the damage from the MS, and then actually regrew the lesions. So the lesions actually shrank down. This is what we're seeing all
Wow.
across the board. People with MS are actually shrinking their lesions by going carnivore and optimizing those nutrients. That's very important, because if you're not optimizing those nutrients, then you don't have the nutrients to regrow the brain. But typically, a carnivore will do that unless you have a malabsorption issue, in which case you need liver or more sort of you might need B12 injections if you have pernicious anemia, for example, but most people don't.
Right.
And his neurologist actually told him at 55 that his brain had actually grown 10% volume.
Wow.
And then the neurologist went on to say that, but that can't happen. That he's like, you literally just said it happened. What do you mean it can't happen? You just said it happened. But that's the thing, is that we don't see that happening because most people are malnourished. 80% of the calories consumed in America, Europe, Australia, and elsewhere are from plants. Most of those are carbs and sugar, but they're still from plants. They don't have any of those nutrients that I mentioned. And if the definition of a hypercarnivore is any animal that consumes over 70% of its calories from meat, then the Western world are hyper vegetarians because they're consuming over 80% of their calories from vegetables. So, we need to go plant-based. No, we tried that. Everyone's plant-based. We're all vegetarian. We're hyper vegetarian, in fact. And that didn't work because it doesn't have essential nutrients. And even before you get to the whole plant toxin thing, it doesn't have the essential nutrients. We cannot survive on these things in a whole food environment. You have to fortify. You have to supplement. And people, well, you could do that. That's aside. The point is, we didn't evolve like that. Our biology is not adapted for that. And so people trying to play two sides of the coin here. They're saying, yes, this is how we evolved. We're herbivores, but you can't even get basic nutrition. Yeah, but you could supplement. The hell are you talking about? You can't hold those two thoughts at the same time. That's double think. These paradoxical sort of conflicting thoughts that people are holding at the same time.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that you were able to get some of those nutrients for your mom, and I'm sure that it did help her.
I think so, and it really bothers me when I hear doctors say, well, that if you complain about arthritic pain or any of those things, they say that's a normal part of aging. When I just even look at my grandparents, they had a completely different lifestyle. They both lived much longer than my parents did. They both lived into their 90s. They worked out on the land every day. They were outside doing chores right into their 90s. They ate what they grew. Yeah, they did eat some vegetables, but they grew them themselves. They tilled that earth and they grew their own pigs and chickens and cows and then drank the milk from the cows. Everything was from their own, the work of their hands, basically. They didn't go to the store and buy this stuff. And I totally get why they lived so much longer than my parents did. And I just don't buy that it's a normal part of aging anymore. I used to believe that, but now I don't.
Yeah, no, it doesn't need to be. Just because it's common doesn't mean that it's necessary. Just because it is the norm, because we see this more often than not,
Yeah.
doesn't mean that it was
Yeah.
always the norm, and doesn't mean that it has to be, and that it's normal in the sense that this is just a natural consequence of aging. It isn't, and it doesn't have to be. Then people say, well, people just didn't live as long. Your grandparents lived into their
Yeah.
90s, were working into their 90s. My grandparents
Yeah.
were nearly 100. Their parents were actually reached 100, born in the 1800s, and so on. John Adams, second president of the United States, born in the mid 1700s, died at 92. So Ben Franklin was 64 when the Revolutionary War started, and he wasn't like some decrepit old man in a wheelchair.
Right.
And
Right.
so people don't actually think. They don't actually like pay attention to the world around them. Socrates was in his 70s and they had to kill him. He was so sharp, that they were just like, no, he's too clever by half. We got to take him out. So clearly no dementia or Alzheimer's had set in, even though he was in his 70s. Um, uh, Alexander the Great, in fact, his army, 2,500 years ago, his footmen that conquered the known world and then some. They ranged between in their 20s to in their 60s. With a
Wow.
14-foot steel
Mm-hmm.
lance with a 5-foot long shaft on it, stabbing a big heavy weight at the other end for balance, stabbing the hell out of people. And these were marching thousands and thousands of miles and hacking people to pieces. 50-to-1 kill rates and things like that. And especially the guys in their 60s, because they were the ones that knew how to survive. Alexander the Great had a general who led one of his wings of the cavalry. And back then, they didn't just sit back in a tent and send soldiers in to die. They led the charge. So Alexander would lead part of his cavalry, and this other general would lead the other part of his cavalry. That general on a horse, swinging the sword in the middle of the battle, 78 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. Right. Full armor, hacking away at people. And he'd been doing it for 60 years, 65 years.
Wow.
You can't just ride a horse through a park at 78 if you're not in good health. And if everyone's just dying in their 30s because their bodies are just falling apart and they're all dying of diabetes and heart disease or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
or they just died from other causes earlier than that, so we just didn't see all the diabetes and heart disease, then how does that exist? How do any of these historical figures exist? How do any of the records with Herodotus talking about how the Persians would live into their 70s and that the Ethiopians would live to be 120, eating only meat and milk? These are historical records that exist, and
Mm-hmm.
anyone can look them up, and people just still latch onto that idea that everyone died at 30, and so we just didn't see these diseases. Okay, let's say that's true, which of course it's not. Then why the hell are people getting heart attacks in their 20s now? Why are 10-year-olds getting
Yeah.
type 2 diabetes? Why is it 19-year-olds getting strokes? Dave Mack, I'm sure you come across, he's on a YouTube
Mm-hmm.
channel himself. He had
Mm-hmm.
a stroke at 19. So we're just an aging population, and so that's where we're seeing this because it just happens as a consequence of it. Then why is a 19-year-old having a stroke? Why is
Yeah.
a
Yeah. It
24-year-old
doesn't.
having a heart attack? That's nonsense. So people are in denial, but it's manufactured denial because it's these institutions and corporations that profit by the trillions each year to perpetuate this state of ill health and profit from it, either selling us the poison that's causing the illness in the first place with processed food and junk chemicals and random agrochemicals and things like that sprayed everywhere and affecting everyone, and then all the medications and healthcare that
Yeah.
has to be provided in order to treat that, which is in the tens
Yeah.
of trillions of dollars per year, all told. Just five chronic diseases estimated by Harvard School of Medicine: COPD, cardiovascular disease, diabetes type 1 and 2, mental health issues, and cancer. Just those five. So not even autoimmunity, which is a major
Wow.
factor, Alzheimer's, dementia,
Yeah.
etc. Just those five are estimated to cost direct and indirect costs to people by 2030 is going to cost over $14 trillion per year worldwide. And that's just those five diseases. So you're talking about an industry that profits in the tens of trillions of dollars worldwide. And they are the ones pushing this propaganda and this fake garbage. Oh,
It's
this always happened.
staggering.
Yeah. Well, this always happened. We're just getting better at diagnostics. Well, where were the statistics back 30 years ago, 40 years ago, saying the exact opposite to this? We knew what diabetes was. We know what diabetes was for
Hmm.
millennia, right? I mean, it's described by Herodotus. And so why are we, or not Herodotus, but Hippocrates? Why are we saying that this is somehow a new disease? We actually see it in the Ebers Papyrus, thousands of years old medical document from ancient Egypt talking about that. They had a lot of grain, a lot of beer, things like that. Their
Yeah.
statues had pot
Yeah.
bellies and gynecomastia for the guys. And they described Alzheimer's. They described diabetes as something that they have to treat. They described the symptoms that someone would have right before they drop dead. And those symptoms are shockingly similar to what someone would get if they were dropping dead of a heart attack now. So these have existed. We didn't just all of a sudden start noticing them. We've noticed these things thousands of years ago, but they were
Hmm.
exceedingly rare until just a few decades ago, and certainly a century ago. And so people are suffering needlessly. This is not necessary for people to suffer. And the best thing about this is that all you have to do is try. So all these people say, no, 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 it's genetic. This was always happening. Fine. Well, then it's not going to hurt you to just eat meat then. No, that causes heart disease. I thought it was genetic. I thought you couldn't stop it. I thought there was no way to avoid it. Okay, so if diet's not going to be the solution, it's also not going to be the problem, is it? Because if it's not the
Yeah.
cause, if changing your diet isn't going to be the solution, then it's obviously not the cause. It's obviously not going to cause a problem. It's not going to be an issue, right? Okay, so maybe just change your diet then. Go back to doing what your grandparents were doing, what my grandparents were doing. Eat whole foods that you grew yourself. I mean, just start there. Prepare them in the ways that people have been doing for 10,000 years. Don't just eat raw spinach. Poach it in milk, cheese, or cream, which is all the recipes for including spinach was always cooked with the dairy because the calcium from the dairy would leach out the oxalates and denature them and neutralize them so that they didn't affect your body. If you look at nutritionists such as Adele Davis 100 years ago, she said exactly that. You never eat raw spinach. You always cook it with some sort of dairy.
Hmm.
So the
Yeah.
calcium leaches out the oxalates. We've known this for hundreds of years. And just now we're saying, no, everybody's an herbivore. We need to eat raw. We know
Yeah.
we don't
Yeah.
need to eat raw. We've known that for 10,000 years. That was the only reason we started eating plants was because we were able to figure out how to prepare them in their less toxic forms. And obviously, glyphosates and weird chemicals and things like that we've been adding. And I mean, glyphosate's just the tip of the
Yeah.
iceberg. We have patented over 1 million different novel chemicals that have never existed in nature since the 1970s. And these are mostly in the agricultural industry, the food industry, and the beauty makeup
Yeah.
industry and things like that, fragrances and things like that. Things you apply to your body or consume. So not good. And there's no system in place where you have to prove that a new substance or food is safe for human consumption before you put it into the food system. But you have to spend decades fighting to get this stuff taken out, like trans fats, which were introduced by Procter and Gamble and
Yeah.
Crisco in
Ugh.
1911. And
Yeah.
we've had evidence of this since the 1990s that this causes atherosclerosis and heart disease and death. And yet it wasn't even banned until 2020, right? I mean, I learned that in the 90s. My organic chemistry professor was talking about he had a heart attack and it was linked to trans fats and how looking at it biochemically, this is how this affected this, and our bodies just don't know how to deal with this because they don't exist in nature. Trans fats, and they start getting deposited in your arteries, just like plant sterols, those plant cholesterols, have been shown
Hmm.
to be deposited and collected in our arteries as well. And then all of a sudden, people are getting heart attacks, and now they cut it out. So, but it took 25 years from that point to then get this stuff the hell out of the food system. So it's really easy to get something in the food
Yeah.
system. It's almost impossible to get it out. And that's exactly the opposite. It should be extremely hard to get it in the food system and very easy to get it out if it's been shown to cause harm.
Yeah.
Sorry, I went on a bit of a rant there, but I'll leave
No,
it.
it reminded me of something though I read recently that we're the only mammals who are smart enough to create our own food out of nothing, but
Mhm.
stupid enough to eat it.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a good, yeah. The only animals smart enough to make our own food, and the only ones dumb enough to eat it. It's totally true.
Exactly.
And then
Exactly.
our animals that we force feed these things because they don't have any other option, and they're getting the same diseases we're getting.
Yeah.
And you look into
Yeah.
the new veterinarians that are coming out of training. What do they say? They say, no, that's just that's just the breeders. They're just that's all this intensive breedings, puppy mills, and things like that. Golden retrievers are a pure breed. It's not. It doesn't get more inbred than that,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't get more inbred than a pug or a golden retriever. I mean that's intensive inbreeding in order to get that
Yeah.
that specific line, and yet the life expectancy of a golden retriever in America in the 1970s, when they were being fed very different things, they were fed like table scraps and other sorts of things,
Yeah.
and not a bunch of packaged food. Predominantly, the life expectancy on average was about 17 years, and now
I
it's
know it's
9
going
years.
down.
So it was way down. It's cut
Yeah.
in half.
Yeah.
And now they're getting all these diseases that we're getting. They're getting diabetes. They're getting cancers. They're getting autoimmunity. They're
Yeah.
getting. I mean, people are injecting insulin into their dogs and cats now. When was that a thing? Do you know a
I
single
know.
human being that had to inject insulin into their cat when you were a child growing up?
No, no,
I
never,
yeah, I
never.
didn't either. And so
Yeah. No, I feed my dogs carnivore now.
yeah, us too. And yeah, but that's the thing. Like vets now, I've spoken to a couple of younger vets, older vets. A lot of them get this, and they're like, no, 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 no. This something's changing, and
Hmm.
they're seeing the corporate capture of the pet food industry into the veterinary medicine. They're actually changing the curriculum and they're changing what's being taught. And so what they're being taught is that this is intensive breeding and it's genetic, when in fact it's the poisonous food that they're being fed. And
Yeah.
no, 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 you can't have a dog just eat normal meat. They're not set up for that anymore. They've been engineered to be on puppy food, like the hell they have. I mean, that's
Yeah.
just so ridiculous. And these are the same predatory companies because the majority of pet food companies or pet food brands are owned by the Mars Corporation, like Mars bars and the processed
Yeah.
junk food for humans too. They're just making junk food for animals as well. And they're again perpetuating this propaganda that all this disease and illness is something else besides the poison that they're feeding them. That's the same thing that we're being sold to.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. Exactly. My dogs are doing really well eating meat.
Good. Yeah, very good.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing too. I mean, try it. I mean, people say, "Oh, that's bullshit." Try it. Try it for a month. Feed your dog
Hmm.
meat. See what
Hmm.
happens. They'll never be
Yeah.
healthier. Dogs don't need a lot of fat, so you can do well with lean meats and organs and things like that. Same with
Yeah.
cats, and raw meat being better. Try it. See what happens.
Yeah.
You'll see. I mean, they'll massively improve their health, and you will massively improve your health. You have all these people, millions now around the world, who have done this. Not only lost weight, and they say, "Oh, well, you lost weight, that's why your health got better." No, people are coming off medication, they're dropping their blood pressure, they're getting rid of diabetes
Hmm.
before they lose the weight, and there are plenty of diabetics that have no weight issues, right? So,
Yeah.
that's not a very clever insight. And so you have these issues, you're on these medications, you have autoimmunity, and people are saying, hey, I've reversed my autoimmunity. Try it. See what happens. If we're wrong, you'll find out real quick. Problem won't go away, will it? And
Yeah.
if meat is
Exactly.
causing the diabetes, well, it definitely won't go away, will it? But
Yeah.
it does go away largely
Yeah.
for the majority of these
Well,
diseases.
this is what I hope for people that are in my age group because
Hmm.
I women, especially women in my age group, we were indoctrinated to do low fat. We were shamed for eating things like butter, having too much fat. You got the lean chicken breast, you took the skin off, you
Hmm.
bought the fat-free margarine if you needed to have something. I mean, it was such a big thing. And I just really want women that are, I mean, I'm 67. I'm not on any medications.
Hmm.
I want other women that are my age to know that that is a possible way to live. And I eat the fattiest meat I can find. I look in the store and I'm like, I want that one.
Hmm.
The thicker the fat cap, the more I want it. And that's, I just, my life has just changed so much doing that.
Yeah, good. Well, I mean, and that's a very important point as well. I mean, so you've come off. Were you on a lot of medication before and you came off of them, or you just hadn't gone on medications in the first place?
I hadn't. Well, I was pre-diabetic, but I wasn't on any medication yet.
Okay.
I had plantar fasciitis. I was getting to the point where I could see mobility was going to be an issue, because the moment I don't know if you probably haven't, but for people who have had plantar fasciitis, the most pain is when you get out of bed in the morning, and you start your day hardly being able to stand up, and it just goes downhill from there. And so to be rid of that, it just and that didn't go away on keto. That actually went away on carnivore. I still had it when I was keto, and to have that be gone, I mean. I do a morning walk. I do an evening walk. I do have arthritis in my knee. I was supposed to have knee surgery, which I canceled when my turn came up last year. In Canada,
Nice.
we have a long waiting list, but I did cancel it. And I eat an ungodly amount of sardines because I really feel that they help my knee. I believe that, and I just feel better than I ever did when I was 20, 30, 40. It feels like a miracle. It really does.
Yeah.
And so I'm just so happy to be able to sit here and tell other people that are my age that it's not going downhill right now. It's really, really good. And please try this. Try it for 30 days, 60 days. Give it a fair shot. What have you got to lose?
Hey guys, just want to take a second to thank our sponsor, Carnivore Bar. I don't promote many products because honestly, all you need to be healthy is to just eat meat. For those times that you're out hiking, road tripping, or stuck at work and you want a nutritious snack that is just meat, fat, and salt if you want it, the Carnivore Bar is a great option. So I like this product not because it's just pure meat, but also because I want the carnivore market to thrive as well. And the more we support meat-only products, the more meat-only products there will be available in the mainstream. So if this sounds like something you'd like to get behind, check it out using my discount code Anthony to get 10% off, which also applies to subscriptions, giving you 25% off total. All right. Thanks, guys. Yeah, definitely. And that's amazing that you were able to cancel your knee replacement surgery. I mean, that's huge. And that's why people like Dr. Sean Baker really started pursuing this, because they saw his patients start to not need joint replacements. Dr. Gary Fettke, who's also an orthopedic surgeon in Australia, he started doing this because his diabetic amputee patients were able to start reversing their diabetes and actually not need as extensive of amputations or any amputations at all. Because they're actually able to reverse this disease, which is major, major. I mean, having to have part of your body cut off because it's so damaged and diseased from the damage to that sugar does to your blood vessels. It's a very, very, very serious issue and can cause very serious disability. I mean, oh, well, put on a prosthetic. You put on a prosthetic. You tell us how that works, It's not that easy for people to do, and it's not nice to have to lose a limb like that. It's really hard. It's very difficult. It makes your life a lot more difficult as well. And that's just, I mean, that's the canary in the coal mine. It means that everything else is going in a very, very bad direction. So being able to reverse that, which no one thought was possible, is massive, and it provides so much benefit to people's lives, which is the true role of a doctor. Not just handing out drugs, which are mostly useless. Some of these things are amazing, and I still use them, but most of them are garbage. Most of them are just treating symptoms that don't have to exist if you just don't eat the wrong thing. And and Dr. Fettke found that too, is that he would get his patients, and he was in a public healthcare system here in Australia as well, and he would just say, like, okay, good, look, you qualify for this joint replacement X, but here's your date. We got you on the list. But until then, you are on this diet. That's what you're doing to get ready for this surgery. And a lot of them would do it and they'd be very serious about it. And he said that quite often, not always, but quite often, he would get, and he was using more ketogenic, sort of very animal-based, ketogenic approach, that quite often people would call him, a month or two before the surgery and just say, "Hey, I don't think I need the surgery anymore. I think I want to cancel my surgery because my knees just feel so much better. I don't even think I need it anymore." Like, okay, well, great. That's good to hear. Let me know if you need anything down the road. That's fine. Which is great. And you'd think that the Australian government would be thrilled with that because it's saving them hundreds of thousands of dollars, and really millions of dollars per surgeon to do. I mean, the average hip replacement in America is sort of between $60,000 and $75,000 roughly. In
Wow.
Australian dollars, that's about 100 to $130,000 or so. So I mean that's a significant amount of money, per joint. And so if you're making it so that 10 people only don't need to get surgery that year, you saved the system $1 million. And if you're doing that with hundreds of people, if people are doing this all across the system, I mean, that's saving tens of millions of dollars. And all the different health issues, not just joint replacements, you're talking
Yeah.
hundreds of millions of
Yeah.
dollars, billions of dollars that are being saved. And since most healthcare systems are taxed to the point of breaking, that's a really important thing. And so this is something that most healthcare industries and besides the ones that get paid for all this sort of stuff, but like the people paying for it, the insurance companies, the people, the governments that have socialized healthcare, they should really be on top of this. The
They
only thing
should.
I think that they aren't is maybe they're getting kickbacks from the drug companies and things like that to keep the system in place,
Yeah.
and not
Yeah.
push this forward. Or maybe it's just too early and people just aren't aware that you can have such a dramatic effect. But that's amazing that you were able to cancel your knee replacement, which you probably had to sign up for back before you started Atkins, and have been waiting for a long time.
The waiting, I mean, we have a social system here in Canada where it's universally paid for, supposedly, but the
Mhm.
waiting list, I mean, yeah, people die on these waiting lists.
Yeah.
It's just insane. But in a way, having the long waiting list gave me time to, to deal with the pain and the inflammation. And I mean, it is possible. It is possible to, if you're not in extreme pain, which I stopped being in extreme pain, then, and I actually had a conversation with Dr. Baker about that. I was seated next to him on the bus going to see a regenerative farm in
Nice.
Gatlinburg. Yeah,
Yeah.
this was at Meat Stock a couple of years ago, and
Cool.
I had asked him about the knee pain and whether or not surgery was still needed if I had, because I was still on the waiting list. And I asked him, do I still need the surgery if I'm not in all this great pain anymore? And he's like, well, that's really the only reason for getting the surgery.
Yeah.
So I decided to cancel it.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah. I mean, that's the main indication is that it hurts and you can't walk and it's disrupting your life, and
Yeah.
so.
I mean, sometimes it feels a little stiff in the morning if I've done too much the day before, but it's not the same as it was before where it was like 7, 8 out of 10 in pain. Now, I mean, I'm hiking, I'm walking, I'm doing all those things, feel a little stiff. I can live with that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, yeah, a bit of stiffness is well, obviously it's better than it was, but if it's not
Yeah.
disrupting your daily life and it's not
Right.
causing a huge burden of issue that to where you're not, it's not preventing you from doing anything you want to do, then absolutely it's not something you'd want to do surgery on. It's it's a big surgery. It's a long recovery.
I know.
It's
I
it's
know.
quite traumatic. I don't know if people have seen videos
Yes.
of that. I don't know if you've seen videos of that, but you're using
I
power
deliberately
tools
did
and things like
not.
that. Yeah,
I don't want to see those videos. And there's also a risk for trigger, like if you have some dementia and Alzheimer's history in your family, going under anesthetic provides some risk to that too. And
Yeah.
I just would rather not.
Yeah.
If I mean, if I need it in 10 years or 15 years, at least I've put it off long
Yeah.
enough to have some good times now in my life.
Yeah, well,
So,
and that's the thing because they do wear out. Not, I mean, the metal sort of
yes.
are usually okay, but there's other pieces in there that would have to be replaced. They only last like 15 years, maybe 20, and then you have to sort of get those swapped out. It's not as
Yeah.
extensive of surgery necessarily the next time around, but it's still a big
Yeah.
surgery. And so you're putting that off as long as you can while you're still healthy enough to get the surgery
Yes.
is always a good idea. And obviously, avoiding surgery whenever
Yes.
possible is always the best idea. But yeah, so yeah, so the knee one again is, I mean, just think about like a cabinet maker making like cabinet joins with power tools. Basically, you're doing some serious
Yes.
work there. And
Yeah.
so if you don't need to do that, just don't.
Yeah.
But for some people, it's really massive improvement. But again, if you get that same improvement just from dietary changes, even though it's not going to regrow the
Hmm.
cartilage, it's just you don't have all the pain. It's really
Yeah.
the same result in the end.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. I
Yeah,
plan to avoid whatever surgeries I can.
yeah, definitely. Okay, so is that so? What was the main point of starting your YouTube channel? It's quite big now. I think you're approaching 150,000, which is great. What was the main impetus
Yeah.
to start the YouTube channel? And what's your sort of goal with that?
Well, I had started just a small website of recipes, and that was just born out of I was having some weight loss success, and people were asking me for different recipes. I was on some online bulletin boards for low carb and keto, and so I started accumulating some recipes on a website that I made, and I had people. I mean, I knew about YouTube, but I didn't ever see myself as being on YouTube. And I had people encouraging me, well, why don't you, show us how to make those recipes? It's, because some people like to be shown rather than just read the instructions. And I had a couple of people in particular that kept pushing me to do it. And I just felt, well, who wants to watch a middle-aged person who's still overweight making recipes on YouTube? And that was kind of my attitude about it. But I find during COVID, it was actually COVID that pushed the decision, because I found I was working from home. I had my mom there. We were in isolation, and that's when I started. So I thought, okay, this might be a good time to start the YouTube channel. I've been thinking about it. And it apparently there are people that want to watch someone like me, someone their own age. There's a lot. I mean, my audience is a lot of women my age, and men too. And there's a lot of women who are also cooking for others in their family. They're cooking for a spouse who won't go keto or carnivore, but they know that their spouse needs to heal some illnesses themselves, needs to be on a better path. I know so many women who are, slowly moving their spouse over to, if not keto, carnivore as well, but doing it slowly through, making recipes that are transitional, shall we say. But getting that proper human diet element, that whole foods element into their daily cooking so that everybody in the family gets healthier. And when people tell me things, well, I can't, I don't want to cook two different meals, or I have to have those foods for the kids. I used to go, okay, I guess I suppose I get that. But now I'm thinking, really, do you want to feed your kids those toxic seed oils? Do you want to
Yeah.
feed your husband or your wife those foods that got you so sick in the first place? Do you want them to be eating that?
Yeah.
And I would think, when you think about it, the answer to that has to be no. And that maybe the whole family move toward it, if not 100%, like gradually move toward that. It doesn't have to be done all in 1 week. It took me a few years to get to carnivore. It takes what it takes, and make a start by getting the junk out of your house.
Yeah. And just moving in that direction
Yeah.
is going to
Yeah.
have health improvements. I mean, I certainly found a massive improvement just from cutting out already being ketogenic, not eating carbs, never eating junk food. I never ate junk food. I
Yeah.
never even drank during the rugby season. So there'd be years at a time that between drinks. And so the tired lie that like, oh, the only reason you benefit from carnivore is because you cut out junk food. I never ate junk food. I never even drank.
Yeah.
Guarantee you they drink a hell of a lot more than I do or ever did. And no, it was the greens. The greens did it. The greens were toxic to me. And
Hmm.
I cut those out and had massive improvements. But just cutting out all that stuff and just getting up to eating meat
Yeah.
and greens is going to have a massive impact on your health. I mean, I was always very healthy. I played professional sports for years. I was always at the top of my
Hmm.
game, athletically and academically. But when I got rid of everything, it was
Hmm.
like ascended to a new state of consciousness. It was insane the difference that it made. But you can massively improve from wherever you are just by going in that
Yeah.
direction, you know.
Even small changes, every little small change helps
Hmm.
and leads to bigger changes,
Hmm.
and eventually you can get there. If health, if optimal health is what you're after, go
Hmm.
down that path. And I really I hear a lot about people. It's not about how long you live. I mean, if I live to 100, but my last 20 years is spent laying in a nursing home
Yeah.
eating mystery meat, I don't want that. I honestly don't.
Brutal. Yeah. Yeah.
I'd rather just drop dead out in my garden doing what I love doing, being outside and grounding with the earth and
Mm.
growing flowers. I would rather they find me there than in my bed in the nursing home.
Yeah.
That's really what it's about.
Yeah, definitely. And by being active and being outside and doing those healthy things, you're
Hmm.
much less likely to be, need a nursing home, in the long
Exactly.
run. I mean, I've seen people come out of nursing homes. There are people that are actually running nursing
Yeah.
homes, bringing people
I
out.
saw that show you did with that guy who owns the nursing homes. I was
Yeah.
just blown away by that.
Yeah, it's amazing. And so, people, getting people better and getting them out of nursing home and getting them home. And I've seen this in other areas as well. I've had friends, colleagues of mine here in Australia who've told me that they've had patients, and geriatric patients who have been able to do that as well and come out of nursing homes. One gentleman was 87. I've told this story before, but for people who haven't heard it, he was 87 years old and basically checked himself into a nursing home because he couldn't care for himself at home anymore.
Hmm.
His family couldn't take care of him either. And so he, in his own words, basically checked into a nursing home basically to die and just to wait for death.
Wow.
And which is a pretty depressing sort of way to look at things, but that's sort of what you're doing at that point. Like, I can't take care of myself. I just gonna have to just run out the clock here. And because obviously things are going downhill. And he came across the carnivore videos. I think he came across some of mine as well. And he just said, okay, I'm going to try this as sort of his last ditch effort to sort of get his life back. And within 3 months, he was not only back home living independently, but he was working out, lifting weights 3 days a week, swimming twice a week, and off all medications. And he had been on a lot and he actually didn't need them anymore. So massive improvements of anybody at any point from anywhere you're starting, you can get better. Maybe there is such thing as damage done. Maybe you can't get back to where you would be optimally if you started this much earlier, but it will still improve you from where you
Hmm.
are. And again, you do it for 90 days and it doesn't help. Fine, go back to doing what
Yeah.
you're doing. Nothing, you haven't
You
lost
can have your
anything.
old life back anytime.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so the videos you're doing now, is it mostly recipes or do you do other things as well?
It's mostly cooking. I would say 80% cooking.
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes will have guests on my channel to have conversations just like we're having.
Mm-hmm.
I mean you've been there before too, and I've had just a variety of guests. But most of what I do is cooking. And I do a weekly live stream where we just pick a topic, like tonight's live stream before I met with you here was about ketones. And so we just pick a topic, we talk about it, what is it, a little bit of education, and then there's live Q&A. And I am not a professional of any kind. Like I'm not a doctor. I don't have medical training. So I do a lot of, well, if you want more information about that question that you just asked me, go to Dr. Chaffee or go to Dr. Boz or I'm directing people to the professionals. But I just think I do it because there's a lot of people that are my age having trouble relating to some of the younger YouTubers, but they like to come and watch me because they can relate to me, and we learn new things together. And I think that's important too, to have that social. We have some social interaction there. So
yeah, well, definitely. I mean, having a sense of a community is really important too. I mean, that's actually a major issue for people I talk about. They say that I would feel so isolated, and so many people are telling me I'm doing something wrong. I can't sort of fight against that. And so that's why I encourage people to get involved in a community, immerse yourself in these videos, because if you have a strong reason why you're doing something, then you can weather that storm a lot easier, or it doesn't even become a storm. It's just, you don't even notice it anymore. I mean, I don't care. I mean, I've amount of people that have told me I'm doing something wrong and I'm going to get some sort of problem or blah, 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 or I'm killing people and these sorts of things. I see the direct evidence to the contrary. It doesn't hold any water for me when I'm seeing my patients, by the hundreds and now in the thousands of my direct patients in my clinic, in my office. And I'm seeing their blood work, and I'm seeing their symptoms and issues dissolve, and their blood markers improve across the board in ways that are not thought to be possible. Shrinking lesions on MRI for MS patients. I mean, people say, "Oh, you're going to hurt." I know that I'm not. I have all the evidence that I need to know that I'm not, and so I'm happy to be out there on my own, just as an island in the storm. It's not a storm to me. It doesn't bother me. A lighthouse in the middle of a gale is like, it doesn't care. A mountain in the middle of a hurricane doesn't care, because it's in such solid foundation. It's not going anywhere. There's nothing that you can do to affect that position. Wind is a pretty weak fluid, as it turns out. And so if you have a solid foundation, all those blowhards just blow right past you.
Yeah. And people need the doctors like you to be providing this information, and they also need the peers, like myself and the others, to show we're real average, normal, everyday people that are doing this because we've got these doctors who are behind us and backing us up. And I think it's a really powerful combination.
Yeah, well, definitely. And this is why I always encourage people to start a YouTube channel, start an Instagram page, do something, start making videos, just talking about your own experiences. I mean, it's so powerful. There's so many people that have done that, just saying, "Hey, this is what I'm doing. You don't need to do it, but this is what I've done, and this is the effects that I'm getting, and this is why I'm doing it," things like that. Those channels have huge impact. And something like Carnivore Ray, he's a really nice guy, and he's changed his life by doing this. That's all he did. He's just saying, "Hey, this is what I'm doing. You don't have to do it, but this is what I'm doing, and this is what I'm seeing." And that's hugely impactful. His channel grew like crazy, and the reason is because that speaks to people in a very specific way that another channel may not. And
exactly,
and when I started, I thought that it was probably already saturated with things. I mean, people were already saying things that I wanted to get out there. Maybe not everything in the exact way that I thought should be said, but basically the basic points were out there, and that's all I was worried about, was just getting that information out to people. I wasn't trying to start a channel. I wasn't trying to do it. I was not trying to make this my job. It's not my job. I don't want it to be my job. It's just about getting information out there and getting this out to as many people as possible. And I thought, well, maybe that's already been done, but like, oh, well, there's some things that I sort of want to say, so maybe I'll say those things. And I started being very glad that I did because I saw a lot of comments saying, hey, I've seen similar sort of things, but the way that you said this, it made really sense to me,
Yes.
made sense to me for the first time. And now I've tried it and I'm feeling amazing. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I think there's something there because you can say the exact same information as somebody else or
100%.
50 other
Yeah.
people, but you say it in your own unique expression and that may
Yeah.
resonate with people. And so that's why I try to encourage as many people as possible to make channels and speak using their voice. And yes, it might be very similar information, but it's
Hmm.
important to A, reiterate that, B, get a lot more signal and noise out there that this is actually indeed
Yeah.
working for people, and B, saying it in unique individual ways that might resonate with different audiences so that they can come to this as well. So I think that's really good
And
to do
yeah,
that.
and it's exactly the same with cooking because I've
Yeah.
had people request things, and I'm like,
Yeah.
well, there's like 100 other
Mhm.
YouTubers who have already made that, and they will say, but I want to see you make it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't matter that it's the same because
Yeah.
we all have a different way to present it, a different way to explain it. I've had people tell me, my mother never taught me how to cook. Like
Mhm.
we only ever have bought food from a store that we put in the microwave. We
Yeah.
don't.
Right.
I just don't know how to cook. And I've had people say, I grew up without a mother,
Right.
and I don't know how to cook, and I really love watching you. And if I'm a surrogate aunt or grandmother or mother to somebody, I that makes me feel good. Actually,
Yeah.
I love to show in the kitchen how simple it is to make a meal. Whoops,
Yeah.
I got my dog barking now. I'm just gonna
That's okay.
close the door there.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. No, that's something I've seen too. I had a friend of mine was they were interested in carnivore. They saw how well it was working for me, and I said, "Well, why don't you just try it?" And he says, "Like, well, I just don't know how. I don't know how to shop. I don't know how to buy that stuff." And I was like, "Just buy meat. Like, it couldn't be
Mm,
simpler. Just buy meat." And I said, "I don't know how. I don't know how to do that." And I eventually figured out what the hell they were saying, which is the same thing. They'd grown up on processed food and takeaway and all these sorts of things.
yeah,
Their parents hadn't cooked. They'd never gone grocery shopping, and they every meal that they had was either from a restaurant or Uber Eats, every single one. And
yeah,
so that is just people's reality sometimes. And so you have to sort of see people doing things and learn how to do it. And yes, have someone take you to the grocery store and say, well, this is what I look for, and this is how you check
hmm,
prices, and this is how you look for
yeah,
good quality and that sort of stuff. And that's important because this is what Dr. Robert Lustig spoke about was that the processed food industry made these packaged ready meals that
yeah,
they could mass produce and provide the same, chicken dinner with, gravy and mashed potatoes and veggies for cheaper than you could buy those individual ingredients and
yeah.
make it yourself. And it's, 15 minutes in the oven, 2 minutes in the microwave versus 3 hours slaving over a hot stove.
I know, I
Yeah. So it's
know,
saving you
yeah,
3 hours and it's saving you money too. And so people all of a sudden started turning to that. And so you had an entire
yeah,
generation raised in the 80s,
yeah,
my generation, who never
yeah,
grew up watching their parents cook. Thankfully, my mom really enjoyed cooking. She felt that was an expression of love for her family. She could make these beautiful, wonderful meals from scratch for her family and give us healthy, good food. And
yeah,
thank God for that. And that's exactly what she did. And that has lasted us our whole life and given us those skills and information. And also the
yeah,
idea that food matters, that food is important for health. And and so now I always cooked when I was out of the house. I almost never I almost never went to restaurants even. I certainly never got packaged meals ever. I just ate meat and make a salad or something like that. You're supposed to have a stupid salad. And but it was always making these things. And then my generation starting to have kids and then they've never cooked,
yeah.
learned to cook, so they're not
It's
cooking.
almost
It's not
it's like a
two generations
lost
separate.
art.
It is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's surprising me when I do. people want to see what you buy at the store. And I was like, no, they don't. They don't want to see what I buy at the store, but they do want to see what I buy at the store. It's amazing how popular doing a video like, here's what I bought at Costco today.
Yeah.
People go crazy over it because they haven't been taught how to do that.
Yeah.
They don't know what they're looking for. They don't know what cuts of meat to get. They don't know, well, what should the price be per pound and things like that. It is something that we're somehow not teaching our kids. So I'm all 4 of my kids cook from scratch, which I'm really grateful for. And I think that if you have kids and you do nothing else, take them grocery shopping with you and teach them what the foods are for and how they're prepared. Just a little bit goes a long way. They should know how to cook eggs and, basic things for sure before they ever go to college or anything like that. It just really will go a long way to their health.
Yeah,
definitely.
Absolutely. And if they haven't had that experience, and they can go to your channel and see.
They can.
Shopping at Costco and cooking as well.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. Well, Anita, thank you so much for that. That was really inspiring and very, very well. It was just very meaningful, and I really appreciate you sharing your story. And I hope that resonates with a lot of people, as I'm sure it will, and I give them the the encouragement that they need to try to come from maybe a similar position that you were in, and say, okay, well, maybe this will work for me because it's worked for her. So thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate that.
Oh, you are welcome. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to tell a little bit about my story and why I'm on YouTube when I actually am an accountant. So
yeah,
just like you being a doctor on YouTube. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, and it was an absolute pleasure.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Talk to you again soon.
Absolutely. And thank you all for joining. It's been an absolute pleasure. Hopefully you guys like that. Please do like, share, and comment. And please do check out Anita Breeze over at KetogenicWoman. And are there any other links or websites that you have that people should go to?
The YouTube is the main one. I've tried other social media, but, at my age, I'm not so great on, the TikTok and Instagram. So YouTube, come and see me on YouTube.
Sort of simpler just to stick to one and just have that be your main focus as well. So that's not too bad. And so please people do check her out at KetogenicWoman. I've also started a membership group on YouTube where you can get sort of members only videos, early release videos, and members only live Q&A sessions as well. So please check that out and join if that's something that would interest you. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you next time. Hey guys, thank you very much for taking the time out to listen to what I had to say. If you like it, then please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel and podcast. And if you're on YouTube, then please hit that little bell and subscribe, and that'll let you know anytime I have a new video out, which should be every week, if not more. And if you could share this with your friends, that would help me get the word out and let me know that you like what I'm doing. Thanks again, guys.